Hey YouTube, how is it going? I hope all is well. Alright, so I'm going to try to make this short and sweet. This song is only about 1:45 in length. I'm going to literally just try to nail it. I'm just going to try to nail it out there. Okay, so here's what's going on. The original tracks and the original solo are a reamp. In fact, all the guitar tracks are reamps. So the way I did it is I went to some online web page or whatever and found these drum tracks. They're generic, whatever. I didn't like the hi-hat sound, so there's no hi-hat. There's nothing. It's just bass and snare the whole time. The bass guitar, I actually recorded the bass guitar. It's literally a DI track from the bass guitar, ran through the 2 notes torpedo or 2 notes, whatever, wall of sound stuff, whatever. Then the original track, so what it is I played a scratch track, right, to the bass and drums that I created, and then I played to that again, and then used the DI track to create basses, I guess, if you will, if you want to call it a bass track or whatever, I don't know. So I did that twice for the original and rebuild tracks. Sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied a little bit. So the tracks are done twice. So there's 2 separate, a left and a right tracks that I recorded with a DI guitar, which the guitar was a Fender Strat that just had some pickups that I hand wired myself, put in. I consider them to be low output, low to medium maybe output. But they're not high gain output pickups. So I think that's where this amp is happiest with low to low medium output pickups. It seems to be right in that spot where it's happy living at. But so I recorded a left and a right track for that, and then for the solo, it's the same thing except for it is done with a Telecaster with what I would consider to be higher output or high output pickups. They're Jerry Donahue, Telecaster pickups, so they're a little bit hotter. And then I used the twin tracker for the sound that you hear. So the actual tracks that you hear is played from a DI track out into the amplifier through the Torpedo Captor X that I own, and then recorded here. So what you actually hear is the Torpedo Captor X with the amp. So about as close to real as I could possibly get it. And what's nice about that is because I have the exact same tracks at the exact same level coming in at the exact same level again, it is as close to even as I can make it between the original and the rebuild tracks, if you will. I hope I made sense of that. It's a pain in the ass. In either case, all it is that the original tracks and the solo tracks are all reamps, but they are used with everything at the exact same settings all the way through the signal chain. So there's that. Anyway, let's hear what the originals sound like. So this is what the Champion 600 sounds like just out of the box. so that's basically it. You kind of get the idea. All right, so hold on. Okay, so we're gonna listen now to the rebuild of the exact same thing. So it's stereo original track. So there's two separate recordings, a left and a right, and then again the solo is done with the twin tracker on the Torpedo Captor X. We'll talk more about that later. But so here you go. Alright, so there you go. You kind of get an idea. Alright, so I should mention too that the in the solo tracks, both of them, I used a boost, not a boost, but it was a Boss blues breaker, not a blues breaker, what the fuck they call that thing? Blues driver, excuse me. So I used a blues driver for the solo tracks, same exact settings on both of them. So let's expose some of the weaknesses and strengths of each of these. So I guess, first of all, let's just hear the drums and the bass so you can kind of get an idea. I recorded the bass. I'm kind of proud of it. I'm not a bassist, so don't judge. The Wall of Sound app that Two Notes have is pretty good. This is just a DI bass guitar just ran through whatever their, things are that they have. I compressed the hell out of it, of course, but pretty neat. Anyway, let's start over again. So I'm going to say this. The original tracks at this gain level with this particular guitar, and what I did literally was I dimed the amplifier, so I turned it up all the way. And this is what you get. Now the downer is this. You could hear the buzz in the background there. That is the downer to the stock. It just always had that little bit of squeal in the background, no matter what. Now in a recording for a track like this with the bass guitar and the drums, this works great. In a live situation, obviously it sounds way too thin. Like this is just a wiry, you wouldn't be able to make it work like this in the real world. But so that's what the original tracks sound like. Let's do the same thing, except for we'll use the rebuild tracks. Notice there's no buzz. Very nice. So right off the bat, you can hear it's a little bit fuller sounding, a little bit bassier, a little bit more low mids. It's just more girth, a little less highs. Not much, but just a little bit. But it's also silent. So the rebuilt tracks, obviously, as a live sound engineer myself, this is what I would prefer to work with, because if I need to thin it out, I can more easily do that. In the recording world, I would say the original tracks are spot on. Like, you can make that work all day, every day. So this is the original tracks. So you can kind of hear the rebuild has a little bit more gain, a little more balls, if you will, all the way around. I prefer that sound myself. It's a little bit playing the amp itself, not in this instance here where you're hearing the reamp tracks, but when you're actually playing the amp, it's just a little bit chewier, a little bit more fun to play. It doesn't have so much of that. There's like this pew kind of thing to it, and this zipper kind of sound. So let's get into the solos a little bit and rip those apart a little more. So again, this is done with the twin tracker thing going on in the Torpedo Captor X, and it has the boost kind of, the blues driver turned on. So hear what I'm talking about with that zipper kind of thing? So what's interesting is with the solo track with the boost pedal, the blues driver engaged, you can kind of hear the buzz come back in, and because there's a little more balls and girth with the rebuild track, it sounds almost louder. It's kind of weird, but it's just chewier under the fingers. Obviously not in this situation here because I didn't get to play it while actually doing this, but when you're playing the amp with that pedal and you're doing all the fun stuff, it's just chewier under the fingers. It has a little bit more drive. There's a little more gain, but so you'll notice it doesn't kind of sound as zippery. It doesn't have that, I don't know, like the splattiness of the original. So here's the original again. So this is a rebuild. This is the original. So yeah, you can kind of hear the phasing a little bit when you play both of them together. It's funny because you don't notice that as much when you play both of the original tracks together. So notice that they don't sound as phasey. So you can kind of see what I mean by how the rebuild tracks are just a little bit smoother, a little bit rounder, probably easier to work with in the grand scheme of things. But the original tracks, as it works with this mix are just spot on. Of course, this entire track was built around them. So when I was creating this track, I did the drums, I made the bass, and then I recorded the original tracks, and I set up the Torpedo Captor X to kind of exploit the best of what I could get out of the original tracks. And I wasn't trying to add bass and this, that, and the other. I just kind of tried to make it sound so it worked really good in the mix. And then I rebuilt the amplifier, and what you're hearing is the difference in how the amp actually responds. And as you can tell, it's just a little bit fuller, a little bit, just less highs, this, that, and the other. So that's the differences between the two. Now, here's what I can tell you about the actual circuits themselves. They're not that much different. I used smaller coupling capacitors in the amp that I built than were in the original, and I actually used some higher grid stopper values. So I did use grid stoppers again, but I didn't do anything to smooth out the highs other than the grid stopper values. So there's not that much difference between the two. The biggest difference, I think, actually in this case comes from the output transformer, which is a 10 watt. I think it's a Hammond. I don't think it is a Hammond, but I believe it's a DSE 125 or 125 DSE, excuse me. So it's whatever their 10 watt variant is in the single ended output transformers that they have. I use it in one of my other amps. I like it. It's a great, full bodied transformer, and because it's rated for double the amount of power that we're working with, I think it holds together really well. It doesn't splat out. It doesn't get, it's challenging to expose, I guess, a saturating output transformer. Maybe it kind of exposes itself here. All I can tell you is that the original amp just sounded like it was always on the verge of just splatting out and just going full on just mode, whereas the rebuild is just kind of always in control. It's like right there, it's chewy, it's got that growl, it still sounds like a champ, it's kind of got that zipper thing going, almost like a violin, if you will. But those are the kind of things that I guess every player has their own taste or whatnot, but I would be super duper happy playing with the rebuild any given day of the week. And as an engineer working with either one of the two, I would prefer in the long run, especially as a live engineer, working with the rebuild. I think in the recording world, the original would actually hold its ground pretty good. It works really well in a mix until you start getting to the point where you're trying to push it to get that kind of saturation level for the solos and stuff. As a rhythm, guitar amplifier, I think it slays in that regard. It does a really good job. But in either case, thank you so much for hanging with me. I think I'm going to do one more video on this project where I do more of kind of like a build rundown, kind of like what I ran into troubles with, kind of how I dealt with the different problems that I was faced with, and just kind of the actual how it came out to be what it was, why I chose to do what I did and that kind of stuff. Because the layout and the schematic that I showed you in the first video is not the same as what I actually built in the amp. So when I built it, I built it exactly like the original schematic was, but then I kind of realized really quickly that it just wasn't going to work that way. So I purposefully left in some spots, and you can see it when I'm building it, that I had already put in some extra turrets and filled them with some components that maybe didn't need to be there. But my whole thought process was that if I didn't use those, then I could just take the turrets out and it wouldn't matter anyway. So I built in some what would you call it? Like what ifs, if you will. In either case, this is boring as all hell. I'm going to stop now. We'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much. Goodbye.